New Orleans Pelicans power forward Anthony Davis is not just an incredible basketball player, one of the best basketball players. I already feel like he's a godlike player, and his trajectory is really crazy in the context of the NBA, especially in an era where you don't have a lot of fantastic big men anymore. And I actually feel like, as such, he is underrated in the NBA. The only players I would take ahead of this guy right now, if I had to start a franchise with a player who's currently available, ignoring age, because obviously LeBron's getting up there, the only players I'd take ahead of him right now is LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry. And I have to say, on a couple of those guys, it's also primarily because they're also ball handlers as well. This is a guy where, sure, when there was the draft, there was the initial hype around him then. But you know what? You've got to ignore that, because for the past 15 years or so, there haven't been many good big men who came out through the draft. It has become a guards league, a backcourt league, and that really is where the championships have gone in general. And you just haven't seen anyone phenomenal playing the 4 or the 5 since the likes of the Tim Duncans, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki came into the league, really. We just haven't had those dominant forces, those guys who are the true carries, but from the big men positions. So initially, you've got to ignore the hype as it is, because so many of them have been bust. So many of them have not gone on to be all-stars, not gone on to have very productive careers, and not gone on to be the star of their teams. In fact, you look for the draft over the last sort of 10 years or so, it hasn't really been that good in general. There's only really Kevin Durant stands out as like a truly godlike player, a player who could one day be a top 10, top 20 player of all time. You look at the other ones, okay, obviously Derrick Rose had potential, but injury absolutely crippled his career. Then you had Kyrie Irving. He's certainly very good in the last couple of years, but he's also got a much better team around him now. And he's still building, We don't quite know where he's going to go. Is he going to have a very good career? Is he going to have a Dwayne Wade career? Is he going to ascend to that elite level where he has a top 20 type career? We don't know yet. John Wall finally got a better team the last few years, and now we're starting to see what he's capable of. Still has a bit to go. Karl Anthony Towns, yes, we see a lot of promise there. His team is not quite good enough at this point in time. So there's been some quality from the draft, but it's not like the drafts of 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where you got truly godlike all-time great players coming through that make up almost a modern pantheon in themselves. And I think as such, Anthony Davis stands with Kevin Durant and then maybe Kyrie Irving as the only true examples from those last sort of 15 years or so who really deserve to be up there as the godlike players from the draft. And so the main issue, I feel like, is because in contrast to all these players I'm naming now, John Wall perhaps not, Anthony Davis's team has been too bad, and he went to one of the worst teams, and they were in a position where they were totally rebuilding, and they haven't got a quality team around him. I feel like people have done that classic thing where they just look at the best players on the top sort of 5 to 6 teams in the NBA, and they hype those guys, and they talk about them all the time, and they do overlook Anthony Davis. People don't talk about him being potentially the best player in the NBA, the most efficient player in the NBA, the player that you'd start your franchise with. He gets overlooked in these conversations, yet he's an incredible player, and the guy's only 24 years old. He legitimately could be the best player in the NBA next year, the year after that. And in coming seasons, I actually think he will become the best player in the NBA. And if they get the right team around him, he can absolutely be a champion and one of the most decorated players we've had in this league. You look at who he is as a player, his body shape. He is a stretch 4 dream for a coach. He's a guy who can play power forward. No one can match up against him. He can score on anyone. He can score crazy range for a four player as well. Hence why he's a stretch 4. He's also has such a nightmare opposition for the opponent. Nobody in the NBA can guard this guy from his effective scoring range, which is pretty deep for a player of his size. His skill level is absolutely nuts for his size. It really is only comparable in the modern day to the Tim Duncans, Kevin Garnett's, Dirk Nowitzki's of the world. It's unbelievable, this guy's talent. And he's also, let's not forget, someone who is a two-way player. And as such, I feel like that is the key element that often gets overlooked in the modern day, where you have the James Hardens of the world who are incredible on offense, but not quite as good on defense, certainly not lockdown players. And as such, being a two-way player and such a dominant scorer, I think he really does have the trajectory to be as good or better than Tim Duncan, than Kevin Garnett. Truly incredible players who I think are some of the best to ever play the game. And I think if you just look at scoring, this guy absolutely can end up, we're talking top 5 scorer of all time on the kind of trajectory he's on and his ability with the basketball. So first and foremost, whenever you talk about or 4 or 5, Obviously, you're going to start talking about, do they have a post game? This guy has the best post game in the entire NBA. He has tons of post moves, and he almost came out the gate with these moves. He came in the NBA with a bunch of these moves, and you can see in the summer where he's worked on adding in those little extra wrinkles, and he's unbelievable now. I mean, he has one of the smoothest rolls to the basket, you know, where he catches it like halfway inside the arc, and he just turns 1 or 2 steps, rolling in straight to the basket, and he has one of those pure post moves where you can see he has planned already what he wants to do, and his length and the way he uses it, it's absolutely unbelievable, and it means that he's so effective at scoring, and that's why also why you can't stop him. Unless you can somehow stand in front of him and guess where he's going to put his first foot after he moves, you're not going to get a charge against him. He doesn't need to actually dribble. He can just move this smooth roll to the basket. In a sense, it reminds me, okay, yes, Scottie Pippen wasn't really a post-up player. He wasn't really a player in that sense because obviously he was kind of playing point forward. But when Scottie Pippen used to be on the fast break, or he used to beat his defender and get past him to the basket, he also had this similar sense of how to use his length. Like he would take those long steps and he would fully extend with his hand and he would finger roll it in, or he'd throw it off the back of the board. Anthony Davis is even better than that. He's a much better player in that respect defensively than Scottie Pippen. He's also someone where this is something that's so lost from the modern game, especially with the centers. This guy has hooks for days. He's got really good hooks, and he can put that ball in doing that if he wants to. It won't be his go-to move. He tends to do a roll to the basket. He tends to do a jump shot, a fadeaway. But if he wants to, he has some fantastic left and right hooks. He can switch hands. This is another thing that's very underrated in the modern day. He's a good scorer of both hands. You see him switch up and go to the other hand sometimes when he wants to fake out the defender. He has floaters. He takes those long steps and he'll put up a little floater just towards. And again, he has such a soft touch for such a fantastically long, large player. Someone who can play a power game, but he has so much finesse to his shooting as well. Such soft hands when he's going there in that sense. And if he doesn't want to use his roll to the basket, if he doesn't want to use his hooks, if he doesn't want to use his post moves, he has dribble moves. He can get himself into his post moves from the dribble. He doesn't need to throw it out to some sick point guard, have them make a move, try and get good post position, then catch the ball and make a move once he's already on the interior. He can get round people. He can use speed. He can use skill, and then he can go into his move. And as such, that's why the guy's unguardable. He takes those long steps into the basket that unless you're just going to zone him, what really can you do to stop that? Then you've got to add in, he has post moves, he has dribble. Obviously, he doesn't have fantastic handles. He is a big man. But think about this. He is a fucking brilliant shooter for someone his size. Really, really good. He has a fantastic outside shot. This is a guy where you go and look at the numbers, and 41% of his shots come from 10 feet out to the three-point line. He's not a guy where, because he's a big guy and because he's skilled and got post, he's just going deep as he can, taking it low post, trying to make a move on someone. This guy's taking lots of mid-range to longer jumpers, longer two-pointers, and he makes a pretty good percentage of them. His percentage is very, very respectable for the shots he's taking, and the skill level to be a big guy like that and be that good is incredible. I think in that sense, he's a better shooter than Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan's a very good shooter. Now, obviously, Dirk Nowitzki didn't have the post moves. He's mainly a shooter. So, yeah, Dirk Nowitzki's a better shooter for that position. But I would say Kevin Garnett's the best person to take as a reference point, as an analog for what Anthony Davis is able to do. Because of those 41% shots that he takes 10 feet to the three-point line, only 18% of that 41 is 10 to 16. Like, you might think, oh, maybe it's all just a mid-range game. Maybe he's just harnessed that. Like, yeah, he has a good mid-range, but 23% of his shots, almost a quarter of the shots Anthony Davis takes are from 16 feet out to just before the three-point line. And he is still hitting a good number from there. And as such, his game is wide open. He can go where he wants to. He can get his shot, and he can get his anytime he wants on the court. Inside, go past people, use his length if he wants to. He's got hooks. He's got the mid-range shot. He can take further out shots if it's low on the clock. He doesn't have to pass it off to a guard for some desperation shot. In that sense, he really is reminiscent of Kevin Garnett, because what a lot of people won't know is, because they'll know from the modern day if they watched him towards the end of his career in the Celtics, like, yeah, Kevin Garnett, monster defensive player. A guy where in that team, yeah, you did throw it down low, and he banged and he ground out and he got his rebounds and he had a lot of interior play. People won't realize, in the early 2000s when Kevin Garnett was playing for the Timberwolves, this guy was absolutely like a top 3 or 4 player in the whole NBA, and it was mainly from mid-range jump shots. He was fucking incredible. You go watch 2003, 2004, those series they played against the Lakers. Yeah, his teams lost to the Lakers. He was unbelievable. He was one of the 2 or 3 best players on the whole floor the entire time, and he had an unstoppable mid-range shot, and it was very, very accurate. Sure, the form wasn't so great on it, but he could make it with a really great accuracy for someone of his size and the distance he was taking the shot. So in that sense, actually, Anthony Davis does remind me quite a lot of Kevin Garnett in that respect. Also, because he's in a bad team situation, as Kevin Garnett was for most of the early 2000 period until he got to around 2004, when they finally started to get some pretty quality players. Never all-star players, though, but decent enough players around him at that point in time. Then you've got to add in, part of what makes the shooting so good is it's not like he just makes the buckets, but he has an ugly-looking shot. This guy has smooth form for a big guy, and he has a fantastic arc. I think that's one of the best qualities he has as a shooter. He has a high arc, but he has that kind of high arc that normally you associate with the good like three-point shooter, which means that you're going to hit so many more of your shots because mathematically the angle is correct to get more of them in and to have a better shot overall. You put him at the top of the key, what a fantastic player. The soft hands when he's closer inside, the floaters, but then he goes to the mid-range, then he goes to further out shots. He has the high arc, a smooth form, nice release. For a big man, it's unbelievable the skill set he has. He led the league in 2-point makes. And then you look, after all of that, you got to say, come on, this isn't like NBA 2K. This isn't a video game character. He obviously can't shoot three-pointers, can he? Oh, no, don't worry. He has solid three-point shooting. Yes, he isn't a godlike three-point shooter. He's never going to be one of the best three-point shooters in the league. But for a big man, he has pretty good three-point shooting. And he doesn't need it. He's got everything else on the fucking court as it is. Now, beyond his scoring, I'd argue he might be the best. I mean, in terms of when you talk about pure scorer, I think you have to put like Kevin Durant there because that guy can score in so many ways. He can always get it off. He's so efficient in how he does it. He has so many, he can do it off the dribble. He can do it with someone in his face. But in terms of like volume scoring, while at a good efficiency, I don't think anyone could touch Anthony Davis. This is the guy where you really could give him 30 shots a game and he would put in an unbelievable amount of points. But beyond that, it's not like he just scores and that's it. The guy's rebounding is big time. He averages 12 rebounds a game. When you go on the defensive end of things, yeah, at the moment he's not like the best defender in the NBA or the best big man defender, but he's pretty good. He blocks a lot of shots. He alters a lot of shots. He intimidates people and is a kind of a rim protector in that sense. And that has a big impact on his team on the other end while he's scoring and busting your ass on the offensive end. Then you've got to consider, you look at a lot of the big men and yeah, they're not that great free throw shooters. That's one of the negatives that they have on them, right? So another area where he's comparable to Kevin Garnett is this guy makes his free throws. He makes like 80% of his free throws. So even when you do foul him down, he'll still make 80% of them. He's still good in that sense. He's better than LeBron as a free throw shooter. Now, someone like Tim Duncan, that's one of the areas where people never really criticized Tim Duncan because teams won. But actually, Tim Duncan wasn't that great a free throw shooter. Now, understandably, big men aren't generally. Anthony Davis is a good free throw shooter. Now, obviously, I won't compare Dirk Nowitzki because, again, Dirk Nowitzki really was someone with like the skill set of a guard in the body of a big man. So Dirk Nowitzki was unbelievably good and could hit like 90% free throws, but he was a freak of nature. Now, one thing I really like about Anthony Davis, I've been watching him so much since he came in the NBA, even when his teams were fucking garbage, is I wanted to see, was he someone who, as a big guy, would think traditionally, I have to give it up to the guards all the time. They have to initiate the play. I get the shots they give me. They have to run plays for me. No, this is a guy who demands the ball and takes a lot of shots because he knows he's good enough and he knows that he can put himself in better positions than some of his teammates do. This guy has been taking 20 shots a game this season. That's fantastic. That's what you want from someone who's one day maybe going to be one of the best big men we've ever had. Because I'll tell you something, the guy who was the most hyped big man of the last 10 years is Dwight Howard. This is a guy where, yes, skill-wise, in terms of athleticism, you thought this guy could be a fantastic, really dominant inside player. But we all know he didn't work on his post-game, or he couldn't get his post-game to be effective enough. And even worse, the ultimate crime for me with Dwight Howard was during the times where he was the best player on his team, when he's playing with the Magic, he was way too passive. He didn't forcibly get the ball. He didn't have some of the moves that Anthony Davis does to get the ball, dribble it, take the shots, have the mid-range shot, so he had to be fed the ball, but he didn't demand from the coach or from his teammates that he was given the ball. You go back and look, in 2011 and 2012, when Dwight Howard was still on good teams, he averaged 13.4 field goals attempted a game. Now, Anthony Davis is averaging 20 field goal attempts a game. You can see the difference in mentality there. It's not just about skill level. I also think that the Pelicans just fucking suck. Like, yeah, Cousins is nice, he's good, but he's getting up there in his age, he's hit his ceiling, and at the moment you've only got a two-man team, and you've got to add in the trajectory is for Anthony Davis. If he's not already better, I'd argue he is, to be better than Cousins in a year or two. So having them sort of both occupy part of the same space isn't as great. Yes, Anthony Davis has the great mid-range game, so he doesn't have to be inside, which is where you want Cousins, but I still don't think that's such a great approach. Maybe it can be an answer to the small ball era if you get some better players around them, but at the moment, they don't really have enough around them, especially not defensively. Like, getting Jordan Crawford, that was a good pickup. Sure, there's some potential. Yet they've got some shooters like Holiday, Caspi. These guys are shooters. They're pretty solid. But for a team that should have such a massive advantage in scoring with Anthony Davis and has the basis for a good defensive team with 2 7-foot guys, and then Anthony Davis is a really good rim protector, shot blocker, why aren't they a really good defensive team? Why aren't they a team where offensively they're close to the best in the NBA? You can see the pieces just aren't around him. Now, I will admit, he does have an obvious downside as a player, and a downside that may yet be the limitation on his career, which is he has been injury prone to a small degree for most of his career in the NBA so far. He has yet to break 70 games in a season. Absolutely, defensively, beyond blocking shots and beyond getting in people's faces, he certainly could hustle more defensively. Now, I will say he's carrying a lot of the load offensively, so I can understand to a degree why he doesn't. And I hope as they add in better offensive pieces and a better offensive system around him, that he will become more of a defensive force, and he'll be so good on both ends. He'll be the ultimate mismatch, and he'll be like the differential in himself. Like, he'll be scoring so much, letting so little go past him. And then you have to add in, yes, he has had so little playoff experience because his teams just have not been that good. Finally, I will say his passing's not incredible. Now, he doesn't need to. He's so good offensively, and he's so good at getting his own that he doesn't need the ball back from people as much, so he doesn't have to have as much of a two-man game with anyone. But he's not a fantastic passer overall. That's not necessarily required for a big man. So I will just say this guy's potential is absolutely nuts. He is still only 23 years old. He hasn't played that long, but his game is already fully developed as an offensive game. I mean, I would even contrast him. Like, I think one of the most skilled big men to ever play in the NBA had to be Hakeem Olajuwon. He has that level of skill, maybe not as many tricks yet, because Hakeem had a lot of veteran tricks, and obviously Hakeem did it in the playoffs a lot, so he's a far ahead in terms of experience. But I think that you add in the longer range shooting of someone like Anthony Davis, and I think Hakeem, if he lived in the modern day, he'd been around rather active in the modern day, would have extended his game a little bit. I think that he has an Hakeem-type game mixed with Kevin Garnett, and then he has some defensive presence, and he has the mentality to be the main scorer, to be the main star. And so I think this guy's already godlike. I think he's absolutely one of the best players in the whole NBA, and his trajectory in terms of where his career can go is absolutely nuts. He could be one of the best top 10 players to ever play NBA basketball.